stuff.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I say evening, it's afternoon. I'll start out by calling this meeting of the Contracts and Leases Committee of the Fiscal Court to order. Madam Clerk, do you have the roll?
Yes. Squire Gentry.
Here.
Squire Varner.
Here.
Squire Blackford.
Present.
Judge Executive Day.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we're duly assembled to conduct the business of the Contracts and Leases Committee. I would like to take the opportunity, if no one objects, to have Steve Hunter come to deliver his report. Steve has to be at the Midway City Council this evening, same time as our meeting, for some code enforcement work. And so I wanted him to come and update the court, particularly since we have most of our members here, on what's going on in planning and zoning. There's a lot going on, and a meeting on Thursday. So Steve, the floor is yours, and please turn on the mic.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Judge mentioned to me this morning that he'd like me to do this type of report, and the Planning Commission is meeting this Thursday at 6:30 right here in this room. I put an agenda at everyone's seat, so you should have the Planning Commission agenda, and it's pretty loaded. It even goes onto the back page. I also put at everyone's seat this thing that's actually the first few pages of my PowerPoint. I'm not ready for Thursday, but I did a few pages. And what I'm going to walk you through this real quick, because all of these items are on the Planning Commission's agenda. And there's a couple big ticket items in here that maybe you all have got some calls on. I know I have, maybe the judge has, that are coming up on Thursday's agenda. But real fast, there has been a ton of cases filed. Several of these applications are in family conveyances. As you all can imagine, we're really close to getting that fix to the floor of the Planning Commission, but we paused it right now because of so many cases that we actually had filed for this month. So that's probably going to be next month, Judge, and we're going to actually get the in-family conveyance new language to the floor of the Planning Commission maybe next month, maybe January. But there's been so many applications filed that we just had to sort of move forward with this. The other thing I'm going to point out to you all, as you know, both cities have passed verbiage already on the medical cannabis language, and we held off of that on the county while there was the ballot initiative, and then obviously after the results from last week that passed here in the county. So on this agenda we're going to put the text amendment on of the very same language that the cities passed and run it through as a text amendment on the medical cannabis. It also is going to have some other stuff in it, because that amendment that went to the cities had some housekeeping stuff and a couple application related stuff, traffic studies, things of that. So we're going to put that text amendment on for this meeting, and that'll come to the court if it passes Thursday. So real quick, I'm going to walk you through this handout page by page. I want to point out a couple things. The first thing that's in this packet is a big deal for our community. We have a major plat that's going forward or being proposed on the 57 acres down on the south part of the city, down by the Parkway. This is the Dennis Anderson tract, used to be the seller's property. This creates a major road network as well as 16 lots, 15 of which would be commercial, and one would be a fairly large multifamily development. So that plat is going to the Planning Commission Thursday night. It is a technical review, an administrative review. It's not a public hearing. It's a major plat. That's a little hard to read, but that's the plat. If you turn the page, this is lot 1 that also is going to the Planning Commission. So they're bringing in the plat in plus the first 2 projects of those 16 lots. This is lot 1. It's clearly a convenience store. There's no labeling on it. It's a fairly large lot for a convenience store lot, but that is lot 1, which would be up at the corner of those 16 lots. If you turn the next page, this is lot 16, which is down at the bottom corner. The western corner of that property shows 220 apartments. So these are the first 3 projects that are all coming together Thursday night for this 57 acres. There's no plan for the middle property right now. If you go back and look at that lot, this is lot 1 and 16 at the far end of that plat. So the other part that you're not seeing with that plat, there was a traffic study done that was almost 100 pages long. There has to be major improvements done to Troy Pike at that entrance. It's going to go to approximately a 5-lane road configuration for a portion of it. There'll be substantial storage lane. It has to be configured as a full signalized intersection at this entrance of this subdivision. So I'll just stop with those 3 in case y'all had any questions. But there's a lot of kind of moving parts here, but that subdivision plat, you know, it's if you drive by there, it's kind of a farm entrance now. You see some trucks parked along there on the old roadbed. That intersection has to be improved to approximately 5 lanes, has to have 375 feet of turn lane storage, and has to be a full signalized intersection. These first projects don't trigger the light, but they have to put all that infrastructure in, and then as they build out those middle lots, at some point it'll trigger the signal.
Then will they come to the city and then in the city or not?
No, this is the development plan that will only go to the planning commission. Now, the traffic study stuff is at the state right now being reviewed. The state is reviewing the traffic encroachment permit and the traffic study. The city will be reviewing the subdivision construction for the road. Those will be city streets. But the projects will go through the planning commission and they go straight to the permitting step. The developer's intention, if it passes the planning commission, be moving dirt by March on these projects.
But they won't go to the city to vote on it?
No, it's not a zone change. It was zoned several years ago. I think the 57 acres was zoned 2010, 2009, something of that nature. Yeah. So moving through, I won't go through these next few plats a bunch. Oh, yes,
Director
sir.
Hunter, if I may, so the developer is taking on a private project to extend the lanes of Kentucky 33, is that right?
So what they've done, Judge, it's a good question. So what happens is when you have a big enough project and you go to the state and say, I want a driveway entrance, the state says, well, it's going to come at a cost. There's stuff that needs to be done. So the state has told them what has to be done. They've done a traffic study, sort of backs up what has to be done, and the developer will have to incur the cost of all those improvements on a state road, which is substantial.
Is there a state road sign-off on that?
Yeah, that would be the encroachment permit through the District 7 office.
And have they received that yet?
They have the traffic study and the application, yeah.
So, but the encroachment permit has not been granted?
Not
as
been
of
granted,
today?
but they gave them guidance on what they want. At this point, the development plan will need the encroachment permit before obviously the construction can start. That's a construction requirement. But Judge, at this point, they're pretty far down the road with the state, enough that they submitted to the, I didn't give you all the traffic study. It's, like I said, 100 pages long. The Planning Commission have it. It's pretty detailed, and there's been a lot of dialogue with the state on how they configure those turn lanes. Their entrance into that subdivision is 100 foot wide. It's a boulevard, and you don't see the turn lanes, but there'll be a right turn lane coming south that's 300 foot long, and coming to the north, there's a 375 foot left-hand turn lane, as well as the pass-through lane. So at the entrance there, it'll be 5 lanes wide.
And Director Hunter, another question.
Yes.
So the plats have obviously been filed. My question is essentially if this is all going to go on out there, this is all in the South Woodford Water District?
So there's been a lot of discussion. We had a technical review committee, and they discuss water and sewer, whose jurisdictions are whose. There's a little bit of debate there, I think, between the two jurisdictions. As far as we're concerned, you know, all that needs to be ironed out before someone pulls a permit, that type of thing. But for the platting purposes, it's an interesting note because that plat will need signatures of some utility. So at this point, we're just reviewing the plat from a technical aspect, but before the plat could be executed, they're going to have to iron out whose utility boundary is, and I believe there's some debate on that. I think South Woodford...
We'd like to follow that, because I believe that, in my understanding of the jurisdictional boundaries, that would be South Woodford Water.
Yeah. So, Judge, what I heard at Tech Review, and I was just more a fly on the wall on that, the city obviously would be the sewer provider. They're the only ones provide the sewer, and South Woodford saying we're the water provider. The city has kind of said, well, but typically if we're providing sewer, we also provide the water, because that's how it's rated and whatnot. And then there's some discussion about when it's annexed versus being annexed. Not my lane to be in talking about all this, but I think the city's of the opinion it could be ours, and South Woodford's kind of said it is ours, but we don't do sewer. So it has to be on water and sewer due to the intensity of this development. We're obviously can't have septic tanks out there for 220 apartments. It has to be on sewer, and it needs public water. They'll just have to figure out those jurisdictional issues before they obviously can pull construction permits. The developer doesn't seem to be too fazed by it. They said they'll just figure it out. That's kind of the way I feel about it too. I'd be fazed by it, but I guess. So that's, again, this some big ticket items here. These are just agenda items 1, 2, and 3 to kick off our night Thursday. I already suspect we'll be at 8:30 by then or something. The next few plats, I'll go through them real quick. We got a couple in-family conveyances. The first one's on Schrock's Ferry. The next one is on, right after that one, is on Lillard's Ferry. And then we have a odd consolidation plat that's out on the eastern side of our county that's half in Jessamine County, half in our county, and it's a consolidation plat on a subdivision called Mustang Cove in Jessamine County. There's a chunk of land that they want to subdivide to different lots that are in the Jessamine County side. So that plat would have to go through both counties. That's called Bluegrass Dreams if you're looking through the plat. The next plat is a consolidation plat on Lillard's Ferry where property owners bought 3 lots and wanted to put them together. And then the last plat we're going to do is on Germany Road, and it's cutting off 4 in-family conveyance lots at the end of Germany Road. On your agenda, that would be item number 8. So you've got all those plats. And then with that, I wanted to go over the cannabis. After that, in your little packet here, we also have a zone change on Clifton Road that will be coming to the court if it passes the Planning Commission. It's a zone change on Clifton Road going from A1 in conservation to A4 to basically reconsolidate some property for some adjoining owners and create one new lot. So that would be a zone change request. If successful, would have to come to the court. And that's on the back page of that agenda there under public hearing items. The other public hearing item, as I mentioned, would deal with the medical cannabis. Again, since it's passed the ballot initiative, now it's time to get something in the zoning ordinance, make sure we have some rules. And I wanted to put some of this stuff in here that I pulled from the state site to show you some of this cannabis verbiage. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it, but in general, we have 11 regions that were set up in the state. We are Region 1. And the way the dispensaries are going to work, there's 48 going to be licensed throughout the state. Every region gets at least 2, and Louisville and Lexington for sure. Every region gets 4, and Louisville and Lexington for sure get 2. So they'll do a lottery on that of these 11 regions. So this is the map for the state. You turn to the next page, they had the lottery for the cultivators and the processors. And this first one says 10 cultivators, Tier 1. I want to point something out on that. I think initially we heard a lot of discussion that, hey, the cultivators might give a farmer an opportunity to grow or whatnot. The way these are structured, these are all indoor growing facilities. They're in industrial style buildings with security. And the first 10 Tier 1 cultivators were picked by the lottery, and there they are. There's the counties they're in. Those are 2,500 square foot facilities. The next page, there were 4 cultivators selected statewide that are Tier 2. Those are 10,000 square foot facilities.
You meant 25,000?
2,500 square foot, size of your house type thing. Tier 2 are 10,000 square foot facilities, and there were only 2 Tier 3 facilities that are awarded in the lottery, and those are 25,000 square foot facilities, and those were in Barron and Warren County. There were no Tier 4 facilities, which are bigger, that were awarded at this time. So those are the cultivators. So that's everyone who's going to grow for the state moving forward with this first phase of licenses. The next page is interesting to me because these are the processors. These are the folks that make the product. So the product's grown and then it's transported to a processor. There's only 10 of these statewide. And those are the counties that were awarded to be a processor in the entire state. So to start with, what that means is none of those were in Woodford County or Versailles. So even though we're going to pass this verbiage about medical cannabis, in the first batch of license, there were none awarded for our county anyhow. The next page shows how many licenses were filed for 48 dispensaries. There was 4,075 licenses filed with the state of Kentucky for 48 facilities. And they haven't pulled those yet. And then the next page shows how the licenses domino by each region. The next page breaks out when they're going to do the lottery. On the 25th of this month, they're going to do regions 3 through 11. That's not us. And then on the second to last page, where regions 1 and 2 will be, the lottery will be on December 16th. But what's interesting there's 608 licenses were filed for this region, and there'll only be 4 dispensaries ultimately awarded. So there's no guarantee we'll get one, but there'll be 4 in this region, and Lexington will for sure have 2. Yes, sir.
So only 2 for the other counties.
Potentially. Well, in theory, I guess Fayette could get all 4.
Yes,
Yeah. But in
beyond-
theory, the worst case scenario would be 2 for the rest of those counties in Region 1, correct?
Okay, 2 for the entire region.
And so all those applications were in. There were 5,000 applications total for all the different levels, about 1,000 for the processors and cultivators, and again, 4,075 for the dispensaries. So going back to what you all are getting ready to do, you're getting ready to put some rules in the zoning ordinance to safeguard, if we get projects in the county. Obviously, at this point, none of those other tiers were awarded to Woodford County. Maybe we get a dispensary 1, maybe we get 2. To put in their license, they would have already had to have locations and leases in hand. So more than likely, if we were awarded one, it'd probably be in Versailles or Midway. I doubt there'd be one in the county. Plus, there's not a ton of property out in the county to be conducive to an actual dispensary. So that's all I know about it right now. It's pretty complicated stuff, but when you guys get the zoning ordinance, text amendment, it's really just to put something in play, I guess, for the future or the next round of awards. I'm assuming there'll be other licenses coming at some point in the future. So that's the Planning Commission agenda. It's pretty busy. It's Thursday night at 6:30. You guys can watch it on Facebook or be here. These in-family conveyance plats have been generating a lot of discussion at the last few meetings. And I think we're getting a run on them, as you all predicted, I think back because we're close to getting the new language ready. And I think everyone's trying to get them in, knowing that the rules potentially could be being revised.
I asked you one question.
Yes, sir.
Page E, number 2.
Turn on his mic.
Yeah. Yeah.
On back page E, number 2, can you explain to me each one of those, or just in
That
small
is the
detail?
medical, so what we're doing is, the text amendment that's going to go before the Planning Commission, our magistrate's referring to under public hearing items number 2, the text amendment would be to Articles 3, 4, 5, and 9. That gets the medical cannabis verbiage in play. It'll go in chapters 5, but we did a housekeeping amendment when the cities adopted this to 3 and 4. It all has to do with our permits and processes. We're going to make CUPs a little beefier on how you have to do notice. We figured we'd just bring the same text amendment to you that the 2 cities did. There's no rules changing other than process stuff about how we do conditional use permits. The medical cannabis stuff goes in chapter 5. There's some housekeeping in line for some equine related activities. So we're just going to bring you the whole text amendment that's chapters 3, 4, 5, and 9. It's mostly housekeeping. It's all our processes, trying to put them in one chapter. The cannabis stuff's in chapter 5. There's no zoning ordinance changes to any sizes or zones. That's a future text amendment.
All right.
Judge, that's a lot, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. Again, we've been getting a lot of calls on those first 3 projects, so just wanted to give the court an update on that.
Thank you, Director Hunter, and it is a lot, and that's why I wanted to get this in front of the court, especially with your other obligations tonight. Does anybody else have any other questions for Director Hunter regarding any of the planning and zoning materials or issues that have been presented here? As always, Director Hunter is available to discuss this in further detail, but I do appreciate you coming and giving that on our front end of our Contracts and Leases Committee.
Thank you, Judge.
Thanks, Director Hunter. You are more than welcome to be excused for your other...
I think we wait till 6.
All right. So we'll move on to the agenda items of the Contracts and Leases. The next item is the Fair Board lease. As you all are well aware, to recap what we've done to this point, the Fair Board lease has been reviewed, and then it was brought up for an additional review. So it's been before this committee 2 times. In our last discussion, we discussed the issue of the Fair Board having a perpetual lease, a lease that doesn't end, which is against the rules and the law according to what counties can and can't do when they enter into leases. I appreciate Squire Varner reaching out to the General Counsel, Heather Becker at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. You all in the full fiscal court have a letter which discusses the department's contract from 2015 and 16 with the Woodford County Fair Association for the construction of the barn on the fairgrounds. This contract resulted in the grant of state funds through the County Fair Grant Program funded by the legislature. To be eligible for a county fair grant from the department, the applicant has to meet the regulatory requirements, and among those are required for the applicant to have a long-term lease of either 20 or 10 years, depending on the type of improvement being made. The leasing requirement is an eligibility requirement for grant application. Specifically, the department does not dictate that the leasing requirement, that the contents of the agreement, but it requires submission of the agreement with the application of the materials to ensure the satisfaction of the requirement. The purpose of the department's perspective is to protect the investment and the expenditure of state funds. At the time the application was made, the Woodford County Fair Association had a 20-year lease, and consistent with the terms of the contract, the awardee, which would have been the Fair Association, should have started construction within 90 days of that award, and it should have been terminated within 9 months of the award. The agreement between the Department of Ag and the Fair Association was a 1-year agreement, and the fiscal court was not a party to that contract. Nothing in the agreement between the Department of Ag and the Fair Association, nor in statute or regulation, require the fiscal court to maintain a lease in perpetuity with a prior grant recipient, though the absence of a long-term lease would prevent the grant awards from being made unless the Fair Association owned the land outright. And so essentially, what we believe is the interpretation of that letter is that the Woodford County Fiscal Court can have a term different than the 20 or 10-year term agreed to have the lease. What I believe we discussed, Squire Varner, in our last meeting was a 2-year lease term. A 2-year lease term with the Woodford County Fair Association would make a lot of sense in a couple regards. Number one, the chair and the vice chair of the Woodford County Fair Association are elected on 2-year opposing terms. So each 2 years you get a new chair or a vice chair. Our terms are 4 years. That means that we would never bind successor fiscal courts if we had a 2-year lease term. We look at other leases and arrangements we have, whether it's with the Woodford County Theater, of which they are obligated to pay us $1 per ticket for ticket sales. The community stadium, again, $1 per ticket sales. And ultimately, there's no other lease in the county that we have such a long lease term. And so I think it's important that the fiscal court look at renegotiating the Woodford County Fair Association's lease with the county. There are things occurring on the fairgrounds, including the need for other organizations, community organizations, agriculturally based organizations, 4-H, FFA, Farm Bureau, other agriculture organizations, cattlemen's, that we believe should be more open to being allowed to use the property in the interim, as long as other community organizations like our cross-country meets. Other opening up the fairgrounds for other opportunities in the time period where we do not have a fair, so that our fairgrounds can be used throughout the community. There's also things happening within the Fair Association that don't reflect well on the county, and it's important that if we are to enter into leaseholds with tenants, that they do things that reflect well on the county. And I think that's another reason we need to look at renegotiating this lease. So, Squire Varner, I think one of the things that we could potentially discuss are some other aspects of the lease that we could potentially look at.
Yes, Judge, looking the 2-year lease term and then a 75-day provision for the fairground to host the fair. I think that window would be something that we could look at. Maybe some annual fee to offset some of the maintenance and things that need to be done at the fairgrounds throughout the year. You know, having Peyton Hall so that the Fair Association can use it year round with some financial obligation would probably be something that we could look at. We have some other things that could potentially come into play. The maintenance is one of the main things, as you pointed out in one of our prior meetings, on how much that the county had put into the fairgrounds during a period of time that is quite a bit of maintenance and quite a bit of upkeep. So that's some of the things that we starting off with looking at that actually as we've not looked at this lease to the extent we have now, that these could be some of the things we need to put in play.
So I'd open up the floor for any members of the committee that have any comments on the possibility of the fiscal court renegotiating the Fair Board lease. Yes, Mr. County Attorney, sir.
One point that I want to emphasize, and I've met with Squire Barner and the judge on this more than a couple of times, and in fact, the judge and I met with Fair Board representatives back in March. Certain things would be sacrosanct and not disturbed, such as Peyton Hall and Red Barn. We did want to make sure there were assurances going out that even though the court wishes to take another look at this, there are certain things that will not be changed. So I just want to make sure we started with that acknowledgement, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I think that the best thing to do, given that we've arrived at this position, is for the committee to recommend and give the authority for Squire Varner and myself to negotiate with the Woodford County Fair Association. I am a ex officio member of the Fair Association, but given that we will, if this motion carries, that we will renegotiate the lease, I would remove myself from that role, and either appoint a designee as allowed under their bylaws, or leave that position open. Sometimes I'm there and I don't feel like I'm heard when I'm there. So I would entertain a motion to allow the Squire Varner and myself to renegotiate terms of the Woodford County Fair Association lease.
Motion.
Motion by Squire Gentry.
Second.
Second by Squire Blackford. I'd open up the floor for any questions or discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And the motion carries unanimously. Squire Varner and I will work on that meeting with the leadership of the Fair Board. Moving on to another item of the Contracts and Leases Committee, we have the Spark Community Cafe contracts. We were in discussions with Spark about the December 3rd Opiate Summit at KCTCS from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The Opiate Summit is designed for us to receive input and information regarding potential uses of our opiate settlement funds. And we do anticipate that we would provide lunch as part of that day of conference, basically. I am also looking at getting training hours approved for that conference for our magistrates as well. I hope everybody will attend. But in that discussion, we also looked at their pricing and availability for our December 19th employee holiday luncheon. And so I'd entertain a motion to recommend approval of the contract between Spark Community Cafe and the Fiscal Court for catering services for the December 3rd Opiate Summit and the December 19th employee holiday lunch. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Squire Varner. Is there a second? Second by Squire Gentry. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And the motion carries. That is the total sum of business to come before the the Contracts and Leases Committee. Are there any other items to be discussed for the Contracts and Leases Committee? Seeing none, we will adjourn, and we will move into the Budget and Finance Committee. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Squire Taylor. Here. Squire Varner.
Here.
Squire Carl. Here. Judge Inspector.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm going to start out with Veterans Day being yesterday, I'm going to start out with the Veterans License Plate Program. In working with the Veterans Commission, we are looking at a partnership with the County Clerk's Office, the Woodford County Veterans Commission, Woodford Post 67 of the American Legion, and the county and the cities in looking at a funding mechanism to provide veterans license plates to veterans, Woodford County veterans who wish to have a veterans license plate. And I want to basically, I've sent out the email. You all are aware of the proposed program. Sandy Jones and Commander Nathan Lauderdale and others are working on the possible tenets of this program. But it's something that I think you all would be well to know that County Clerk Sandy Jones currently privately fundraises to provide as many license plates for veterans as she can through a license plate program. It's a very worthy cause. We appreciate that she does that. She'll be here later and we'll recommend that. But the budget and finance piece would be that the fiscal court would work with the cities to fund the gap between what we could raise in private fundraising and what the American Legion was willing to provide. Commander Nathan Lauderdale of Post 67 mentioned that in the most recent census, there were 1,800 Woodford County veterans. Now that obviously would not encapsulate everybody who would be interested in or be eligible for a license plate. However, that's a good, probably conservative figure for the potential total cost of the program. And so I want to bring that up to say that we have funding in the Veterans Commission line item of the budget, and that's where we would look to expend these funds out of. Assuming we were able to get the program up and running, it would meet all the requirements of a public purpose, and we have the framework for the funding with private funding through the American Legion and Sandy Jones's program. So I'd like to open up the floor for any questions or comments regarding the Veterans License Plate Program. Squire Taylor, you're recognized.
Just a clarification, is it a need-based or is it just a unilateral? I know that
the concept of the proposal would be that it would be any eligible veteran.
Gotcha.
Which my understanding is they have to provide a DD 214, the standard veteran eligibility criteria, and that's how they're eligible to get them at this point. So anybody with a valid DD 214 is probably the answer to that. Squire Varner.
Yes, Judge, I might have missed it in your talking about it. Is there a number on what Sandy has did in the past so far on her? You said she done some fundraising and
Yes. So Madam Clerk will be with us for our meeting, and we'll see if she'll be able to provide that information on there. That's a good question.
Thank you, Judge.
The total cost of the program, I think, for a conservative estimate, $24 for the license plate times 1,800 potential veterans. Again, that's a very high number, but it's a conservative estimate of all the eligibility. And it could be a situation where we look at the funding and it's something that we need to have a first come, first served basis. But again, I want to bring this to the fiscal court, particularly because of its relevance with Veterans Day yesterday. This was discussed at the annual meeting of the Woodford County Veterans Commission on Saturday. And Sandy Jones, in addition to working on the election, has been working on this as well.
And Judge, I just said, it's something that the clerk and I have discussed the last several years as a priority for her. I know that it's been really on her heart whenever they encounter veterans that have been unable to purchase that license plate, and trying to work to meet all those needs is obviously important to her and important to this community, I'm sure, as well. But I'm glad that we're moving in a positive direction.
Thank you, Squire Taylor. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call Director Bailey up to talk about our EMS boot allowance.
Thank you, Judge. We're coming to you to see if we can't get the allowance raised. It's currently, right now, the county has a $100 allowance for boots. And if any of you has bought shoes lately, you can't buy a set of boots. And the thing different for what we're looking at is our boots need to be at least Gore-Tex. They have to be able to resist blood, because there's a lot of times these guys are standing in that type of an environment, and that will soak through a normal shoe, normal boot. And so we're trying to get it to where we require them to wear something like that to prevent them from absorbing that into their skin. And we're trying to get that amount raised to where they don't have to pay out of pocket to buy their boots that are required to work with. We've got some pricing from different companies. Around the cheapest thing that we can find is around $200 for a Gore-Tex boot. Hikes makes that boot to where it will resist blood and other fluids. It's like the work that we worked out on the BG Parkway. We were out there working that guy, trying to get him out of the vehicle, and we were standing in gasoline. So if you mix gasoline and then you get him in the car and then we're standing in blood on top of it, you can see where that becomes an issue. So that's why I asked to see if we could not get this increased. Again, it's a requirement that they have to wear something that can resist that for them for their protection. And I just hate seeing them have to pay out of pocket for something like that. So we'd like to try to get it raised. Like I said, the cheapest thing that we can find is the $200. If we go to the $250, then it opens up a lot of different brands of boots that we can work towards. So it's up to the court as to what you all think is feasible for that.
Thank you, Director Bailey. One of the things with uniform and boot allowances is that there's a IRS regulation regarding fringe benefits, what are considered fringe benefits. Anything that is ancillary to your employment that is over $100 is considered a fringe benefit. However, there are ways where the county can be the owner of the item, and it can be used by the employee so long as it is not the personal equipment of the employee. For example, the boots you have on would be Woodford County's boots. When you ended your service or they were retired, they would be surplus. They would return back to the county. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is, I don't think any member of the Budget and Finance Committee would have a problem with increasing the boot allowance, but anything over $100 would be taxable income to the employee, and that we don't want to make them pay more money for something we're providing for them. I've had an in-depth conversation with our treasurer. Melody is currently with her son, who is enlisting in the United States Air Force, and so we obviously excused her to be allowed to do those important duties. She has a better grasp and understanding of the IRS process and those sort of things. But I think what we want you to take from this, Director Bailey, is that we hear you, that we are in support of providing adequate gear at the best possible scenario for our EMTs and paramedics so that it doesn't cost them any funds. With that being said, I'd open up the floor for questions or comments to the director. Squire Varner.
Yes. Director Bailey, what's the longevity of the boots?
Boots, typically, if you get a good boot, we can get 2 years out of it. Some get longer, but typically 2 years usually holds them up pretty good. The ones that we've been purchasing for the $100, if you can get a year out of them, you've done good. We're usually replacing them within that year. Again, they're in a lot of different environments. They don't get choices as to what they go through. But we can typically get 2 years out of a pair of boots.
Are these American-made boots? Or do you know?
Yes, as far as I know, the one company is Hikes that makes them, and AMPREP is the other company that we've found.
I just know the work boots, and that's what essentially we're talking about.
Right.
On the farm, that the foreign branded boots will not.
Yeah, they don't last long.
So that's the reason I have my comment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Bailey. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Squire Carl.
Yes, sir. Well, I can tell you this, when I was at the sheriff's office 8 years ago, $200, I was probably spending with the guy's boots then, because you have to have good boots. They have to. So this is definitely, I think everybody's in support of that and definitely doing the.
And we understand the tax laws. We've been working with that for a while. We do, when we assign uniforms to the individuals, they sign those out. They have a form that they have to fill out and sign out. And then if they leave employment, we get them back from them. We also, that's why, like with our part-time, you'll notice if you look at their uniform, it'll have the logo on it, but it does not have their name on it. That way we can continue to reuse that piece of equipment. But.
Yeah.
Other questions? Squire Blackford, sir.
Director Bailey,
Yes, sir.
how many employees do you have that need to have these boots, and have they been paying out of their pocket all this time?
They have been paying out of the pocket. We will reimburse for the $100. They've been buying their own. We have currently 20 full-time employees, and then we have about 17 part-time employees. They don't all get them at the same time. They spread across. Currently, I probably have about 4 or 5 that need boots at the moment that would do that. Like I said, I've got a lot of them that purchase their own, and they, like I said, it's just getting more and more expensive on them, and we're trying to eliminate that because I have to watch what they come through the door in, just because we don't want to pay injuries if they step on something out there and it's not an approved piece of equipment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Squire Blackford. Other questions or comments for Director Bailey? Seeing none, we'll work on that for you. I know our treasurer is with us on the Zoom. We got her on there, but I think we're good to work on that and get back to you with the plan.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Director Bailey.
Thank you.
Moving on to our holiday decoration proposed expenses. You all have seen the proposal that the event coordinator, Katie Cooley, has recommended. And I wanted to run that by the Budget and Finance Committee for you all to review. As you all know, the events in Woodford County have grown drastically. The numbers were in for the Halloween Spooktacular, and there was over 6,000 people downtown Versailles. Last year, that number was less than 3,000, and it was over 6,000 this year. Christmas is also a big draw. You all see the lights going up around the city. And there's a lot of good organization going on, and I'll keep you all apprised of that. But I would open up the floor for any discussions or any questions about the holiday decorations, and these are specifically for the courthouse and courthouse area. Squire Varner, sir.
Yes, thank you, Judge. Judge, I'm all for doing some decoration, but I would like to see, in my opinion, the courthouse. We do our business here, and I'd like to see it classic decoration. Some I see on this list, I understand where we're coming from, but some just classic decoration and not a lot of commercialization, I guess is what I'm getting at, in front of the courthouse, so.
Will you yield to a question? What do you see
Yes,
as,
sir.
what do
Yes,
you see as commercialization? I'm
Well,
not familiar with
I've
that.
been buying, and sometimes it gets a little busy out in front on some decorations, and I know it's for the seasons and it's for the celebrations, but, you know, Christmas, and I know there'd be a lot of decoration downtown, and just looking at this list, I don't know where all this would be, but the big bows and stuff is nice and things, but this is my opinion, and I just wanted to
Sure.
let you know that I see that I'd like to see it decorated like in a traditional Christmas look.
All right. Other questions or comments from the Budget and Finance Committee about the proposed courthouse decorations? Squire Gill,
Can
you're
I say
recognized.
something? Thank you. I just think the appearance of the courthouse should always be dignified. It should show a respect for and understanding of the courts of law that are held here. And I think sometimes we get away from that. I've seen it more and more over the last few years. We have, you know, endless advertisements, banners, various things. So, you know, it becomes so busy. I agree with Squire Varner that we really need to think about that, and that remember what this building stands for, and let the outside of it reflect as much as we can what goes on in the inside. And that's just my opinion as well.
Squire Taylor?
Judge, I don't know if it's valuable for anybody that has concerns to go over the placement decoration, the decoration placement plan or anything else, particularly with the folks making that judgment. I mean, I think the courthouse is pretty festive inside and out, and I think it's a great direction to go, but obviously folks' concerns would be productive if we had conversation with folks directly on that concern. But I appreciate everybody's hard work in putting this together.
Absolutely. And I do agree that there was a lot going on. We had Halloween, homecoming, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, all that sort of stuff. But we're trying to reflect the festive atmosphere to the community, and I frankly disagree. I don't think that we've disrespected the hallowed halls of this courthouse in any way. In fact, I think we've made it a welcoming place, and a place that reflects the spirit of what's going on in our community. A lot of the decorations that we do are not for the courthouse. It's in concert and collaboration with the rest of downtown in our community. But this is what we do, is we discuss these things and we welcome input. So is it something you all would like to hear more about for these decorations? Is our event coordinator good to go and work with the treasurer to purchase these items, or would we like to have some more information? Squire Varner.
Judge, is it possible we see a design prior?
I think that would be workable.
And then we could all look at it and see if it's...
Yes, I think that would be workable. Upon the approval of a design and a email vote to follow this meeting, would you be willing to vote on something then?
My opinion, I think I believe, if we could see a design and then have some, you know, maybe some discussion after that, maybe before the vote.
Excellent. Any opposition to that? Any objection to that? That's how we'll handle that. I appreciate it, and I'll have our events coordinator work with everyone to get that done. Moving on, the Paynes Depot Bridge project. This is a opportunity that has come to the fiscal court, and it's one that needs some explanation. So the legislature passed the County City Bridge Improvement Funds. These funds are a total payment for infrastructure, not the same as the 80-20 bridge funds. As you are familiar with the 80-20 bridge program, 80-20, 80% is for the county and 20% is paid by the state. This new program, which passed July 1 in the current fiscal year, is just being rolled out by the Transportation Cabinet. And what it requires is that the cities or counties, counties in this case, provide the engineering services and the construction oversight services that engineers provide, and that the full amount of the bridge project is then funded at 100%. So I'm very pleased to report that the Paynes Depot Bridge is the only bridge in Woodford County that is county bridge. That's important to note. We do have some state bridges that have some challenges, but those are not our responsibilities. The Paynes Depot Bridge is the only county bridge that is even eligible for this program. But the Paynes Depot Bridge at some point will require total bridge replacement. And depending on when that time frame is laid out, as you all know, the cost of everything will continue to increase. So we think it is a great opportunity. Road Supervisor Bo Wilson and myself think it's a great opportunity to apply for this program for the Paynes Depot Bridge. In discussions with Road Supervisor, HMB Services, this bridge could likely cost anywhere between $800,000 and $1 million, $800,000 and $1 million to fully replace. Under the 80-20 bridge program, that would be $200,000 our cost, $800,000 our cost, $200,000 potentially from the state. What I said the first time.
Yeah.
Basically, we would be on the hook for $800,000. That is the 80-20 bridge program is the 20% is covered by the state. The 80% is up to us. In this situation, we would only be on hook for the engineering services, and the full cost of a bridge would be funded through this program. There is $25 million in the pool for this fiscal year and $25 million for next year. And as of today, there are no counties taking advantage of this program, so we would be able to get on the front end of it. As I sent in my email, there is a December 13th deadline for a December 20th consideration. And so we would be able, if we had an engineer, HMB has provided us a quote, and we've called around to a few of the engineering services, and $4,500 for engineering services, and a contract to enter into an agreement for them to apply for the CCIP grant for the Paynes Depot Bridge would be our initial cost. And that would be a sunk cost. We would have to pay that. We don't get the application in, doesn't matter. But there are some very detailed estimates and calculations that go into that cost, and the transportation is recommended that we not try to do that in-house, that we hire an engineering firm to do that. It is anticipated that the full engineering cost for engineering design and services could be anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000 total. That would be what the county would be looking at. However, we would get a much better cost estimate of that once we got into the application process. So, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions about this grant program and the bridge that is in Squire Taylor's district. Squire Carl, you're recognized.
On that, the county would be responsible for the 20% on the bridge.
And
So $200,000.
yeah,
And the state pays the other.
if we were to do that, but that would still be 200,000 compared to
$1 million.
80,000. Yeah, I mean compared to 80,000 in this scenario.
And that's now, so,
Yeah.
but I wanted to.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. All right.
It's right.
I'm just trying to sell it, okay?
Sounds a lot better that way.
$200,000 versus $80,000. Excuse me. Other questions or comments? Squire Gill, you're recognized.
So just to clarify, we'd be paying the $80,000 for the engineering, and they would pay, if we are approved for this grant, then they would pay 100% of the rest of it.
The bridge infrastructure cost, yes.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. We don't have that $80,000 in design fees in the budget, but we have the ability to move funds around for those to be available. There's no issue in affording it, but that's why we have the Budget and Finance Committee to discuss that. So is there a motion to authorize the road supervisor to apply for the county city bridge improvement funds for the Payne Depot Bridge and to authorize the judge executive to sign any and all documents related thereto?
Motion.
Motion by Squire Taylor, second by Squire Varner. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries. The next would be the motion to approve the cost proposal for HMB Professional Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $4,500 for the engineering services and to enter into an agreement for the CCBIP grant for the Paynes Depot Bridge.
Motion.
Motion by Squire Taylor, second by Squire Varner. Any other questions? All those in favor, please vote and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Let me continue to emphasize that the Woodford County Road Department has done a tremendous job in maintaining and keeping up our bridges in the county. When we met with the cabinet, they stressed that many counties had 3, 4, 5, 10 bridges that were eligible for this program. And the fact that we had one was a testament to Road Supervisor Bo Wilson and the crews who constantly monitor, maintain, and keep up our county bridges. It is, when you're in these meetings and the state is praising the county for the work we're doing locally, and they know how hard this work is being done because they're doing it on the state side, it's a testament to the expertise that we have in Road Supervisor Bo Wilson and the capability of our crews. So, Mr. Supervisor, thank you, sir. Good bridges save the taxpayers money. It makes sure that our buses and our ambulances can get where they need to be. To make a few other notes, that eventually this county bridge would get its weight limit lowered. There's about 1,000 some cars that would go over that bridge every day, and that would be a 7 to 8 minute detour per car and ambulance and bus if we did have to ever lower that weight limit. So getting in front of this, it's something that frankly we wouldn't do without this program. Even my feeble understanding of the 80-20 program lets me know that we would not do that. All right, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Road Supervisor. All right, anything else on the CBIP grant? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Huntertown Cemetery. I emailed you all a information about the Huntertown Cemetery work that was done by Clearview Forestry Management. And I would like to open up the floor for any discussion thereon. Squire Gill, you're recognized.
Thank you. I was just wondering what we can do going forward to, that got through the bill list without me knowing about it. I know it was on the OneDrive, but I think the bill was received in September and it was on the bill list for October the 8th, but it was only on the OneDrive and it came in late. It didn't come with the rest of the bill list. So I was just wondering what we can do to prevent it, because that was a big amount of money and it really needed to be discussed. And in the nature of it, I know like 9 years ago I looked into this and I was told repeatedly that this is not something we could expend because it was owned by a private entity. It wasn't owned by the fiscal court. So I would really like to get that clarified going forward. Not that it isn't a great thing to do. It needs to be taken care of. The cemeteries do need to be taken care of. But I don't want to do anything we're not supposed to be doing. So I would really like that clarified, if it's all right for us to expend that money. And then also going forward to make sure that we have a discussion about it before the bill goes through.
Yes, Squire Gill, I appreciate that. I share your sentiments. In my email, I also mentioned that we could have the opportunity to discuss that. You and I didn't have the opportunity to do that, but in my email, I was very clear that things like this would not go before the court without proper voting and approval. The issue was not that the project was not approved, but that it had commenced early, and so I didn't have the opportunity to bring it before the court. But in the future, we will ensure that things like this don't happen again. And so you have my apology, you have my assurance that moving forward, we will not take up anything like this. To be fair, we've not done anything like this in the past either. I do believe that the Huntertown Cemetery has been abandoned. It has a non-entity ownership, and I don't believe that it is doing work on private property. But that being said, everything like this will come to the court for approval in the future.
Can I just clarify that I misspoke when I said private property is property not owned by the county. And we took it out of our off-site maintenance budget, and I wondered too if that should come out of cemeteries or another fund or line item.
And I do believe that, again, as I explained in my email, the off-site maintenance was selected because maintenance department is the one that had undertook the project, and it was in excess of the cemetery line item. Mr. County Attorney, sir.
To answer the second part of that, Squire Gill, counties can adopt an ordinance creating a county cemetery board. They don't have to. Woodford County chose to do so. My concern in this regard is that to address your question about in the future, the fiscal court should not be a first stop for a request like this. Because what the statute says for a county cemetery board is that a county acting under authority of that section which creates it says they may apply to the Department for Local Government for grants to restore and maintain nonprofit cemeteries that do not receive perpetual care funds. Okay? Statutes are important not just for what they say, but what they don't say. This does not say that they should be applying to local government. Okay? There can be a question as to whether they still can, but it is clear that the charge of a cemetery board should be to seek grants, not to seek direct funding out of public tax dollars. They can also seek private donations. They can come to the court to seek help in acquiring grants. It may be that they're unable to get grants, and then it might then come to the court under the general powers provision about preservation of cemeteries. But in my opinion, and the court can take whatever position you as a body choose to take, any future cemetery request should not initiate with the Woodford Fiscal Court. You don't even need to have a cemetery board to come to the fiscal court and ask for money. Any person with an interest in it could do that. So the fact that the legislature adopted a statute that says that we may have these boards in our counties, but that the charge of the board is to seek grants through the State Department for Local Government tells me that in the future the court should not consider any request, and again, this is just my opinion, you all can disagree with it, unless you're first satisfied they exhausted all grant pursuits or they were insufficient to meet the needs. But then you don't even have that discussion unless that's first done. So the other thing is that same chapter in our statute, or a different chapter in our statute, says that the cemetery, except private family cemeteries, shall be maintained by its legal owner or owners. And that gets to the question in this specific case, and the judge is correct, I don't know who owns this. There are deeds that date back years to Huntertown Cemetery Company. I don't know who that was then. I don't think it's anything now. That raises the question then of who has ownership interest in this, who may it have reverted to, who's accepted responsibility for it. My point in saying all of this is, in the future, any request should only come to the fiscal court after the channels have been pursued through the State Department for Local Government first. That would be my opinion and my advice to the court. Again, the court is free to do what you wish with that opinion.
Thank you, Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, Judge.
Again, I think it was clear in my email how we'll move forward. I think that's the long and the short of it. Squire Gill.
This is a really important historic cemetery. And apparently, I don't know, Sue Finney is here and she could speak to that if the court even wants to hear it about the ownership of the cemetery over the years and where it stands now. It's apparently owned by an entity that was called Tabernacle 2 that is long gone. So essentially, it's deeded to an entity that really no longer exists. So I don't know if it would be something for the cemetery board to take up or something for the fiscal court to look into as to what we do from there. And
Let me answer. Cemetery board.
okay, thank you.
So in 1900, Mr. Buckner deeded the 3/4 of an acre that is now the Huntertown Cemetery to the Huntertown Cemetery Company. The Huntertown Cemetery Company is the holder of the deed since 1900, 124 years ago. Tabernacle number 2 was an organization at one time that took over the African American cemeteries in Woodford County. They took over, well, I say took over, they were the named party for PVA purposes. The deed still remains in the Huntertown Cemetery Company's name. You are exactly right, Squire Gill. This is one of the most important African American cultural and historic sites in Woodford County. It has over 60 enslaved persons buried there. It has prominent military heroes, veterans, families, and prominent members of our community, and specifically the Huntertown community. The Cemetery Preservation Board met. They met in March of this year. They asked for the fiscal court to undertake this work to be done. They met in April. They asked for the fiscal court to earmark $15,000 to this project, and also for the fiscal court to look at doing the work before Memorial Day so that a Memorial Day celebration could take place there. Unfortunately, we know how all of that played out to this point, but I do believe that both the fiscal court and those that have worked on the project, specifically Mr. Road Supervisor, Director Wade, myself, others, understand the gravity and the importance of this historic site. So when you say that a Tabernacle number 2 is the owner, they are not an owner, they are not an entity that exists, they are not registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, nor have they ever been, nor have they been dissolved, and therefore Huntertown Company, Cemetery Company, was the last owner. They were probably created to specifically take care of that cemetery. They no longer exist. I think all legal rationale would say that the cemetery has been abandoned. If it has not been abandoned and there are private owners, then the Boy Scouts, the Huntertown Community Interpretive Parks Friends, other organizations who have done good work to go in there and clean up, Donald Morton and others, would be trespassing on private property, and that's not the case. But I do agree with the county attorney's assessment of the role of the fiscal court, how this played out. But I also want to emphasize that this is an extremely important historic site in Woodford County. Squire Taylor.
Judge, I just want to, if maybe we can get a clarification. The breakdown is a discussion for itself, but I guess I'm confused on the utilization of these of funds for these purposes, because we did put in that 15,000 in the budget, and we didn't have any of this discussion about a question of that expense. Is there other expenses that we could have used for the cemetery board that would have been not questionable to folks? I'm not sure. That was my whole understanding of those funds when we appropriated them in the budget in that discussion, that it was to address these abandoned cemeteries, particularly this one.
So, Squire Taylor, what I would say is that we just need to be more intentional and focus on what we do and how we do it. I agree with the county attorney that we need to go through the exhaustion of all possible grant funds and other funding, private funding sources. I know that in speaking to folks who are involved in the Huntertown Community Interpretive Park, what they want to do, what they want to see done. I know that the Cemetery Preservation Board met today. I believe they recommended that it looked at the park taking on the cemetery. That's not their role, but that's something that they may have, that they have recommended. But as far as the fiscal court's involvement, we just need to be a little bit more intentional on how we approach the expenditure of these funds, and I'm willing to do that.
Well, I think this was obviously an important preservation effort, and from the pictures and the cost, a very daunting project that would have been difficult to get. Many, I don't know, Eagle Scout project could have addressed that serious need. Yeah. So I am grateful that we're able to get that done, and maybe we have some more options going forward to meet those needs based on what the condition it is in at this point, thanks to this work.
Squire Blackford.
Yeah, that was my thinking also, Judge, when we had about allocated this money for the cemetery, for some of that money to go for the cemetery for the effort to clean it up. Have to get it started, and the other come in behind it and keep it clean, But they did get some help getting it started, getting it cleaned up, so I thought the money was allocated for them. It is a historic cemetery, we need to preserve it, keep it.
And Squire Blackford, to your point, the work that was done by Clearview was intentionally done with the sensitive nature of the gravestones and the issues with the ground. They hand lowered every branch so that it didn't come down on the headstones. It was a very intensive, as Road Supervisor Bo Wilson and Ricky Foley at the Road Department reviewed, very intensive work. It was good work, and it was billed to us to be paid, and so we paid the bill. I apologize how it happened, but that's the long and short of it. Squire Gill.
I just hope that the cemetery board can do something or find some direction as to preserve and maintain this, because I think there are goats in there right now. Yeah, they can get in. So if there's some way they can protect it, and if there's any way for the fiscal court to help with that, I don't know. But anyway, it is, like you said, it's a very important cemetery, and it needs to be preserved.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Squire
Judge,
Brown, you're recognized, sir.
It's cleaned up good enough now, and the hard work they done, you couldn't got a better job. Somebody needs to stay on top of it, because it'd be easy to keep clean now. And if it's a goat's going, I don't know who's got allowed to go over. It wouldn't take much to fix the fence. So it's set up to be, and it should have been, because of who's in there. And you just can't let something like it just go, So it's done, and we'll go on.
Thank you, Squire Brown. Mr. County Attorney.
Yeah, Squire Brown's point is well taken. It's now just a matter of maintaining, at least in the immediate future, and that gives you all time to reflect on how these matters should be approached in the future. And the judge and I talked about this potential solution. Obviously, with Huntertown Community Interpretive Park right there, maybe it comes under that fold. It's part of that, and that's the way to have it, if necessary, in the budget. But again, right now, it just needs to be preserved and maintained in the excellent condition it was returned to, and that gives you all plenty of time to address this in the future. So there's no real immediate.
No. Another thing, they hand carried that stuff down like the judge said, and they did not break one stone that I. And that is unbelievable because them stones from 1900s. You could look at them and spit on them, maybe break it. So they done a good job.
Thank you, Squire Brown. I just would emphasize to the court that in the future, these will be full voting projects of the court, so you have full ability to weigh in. Any other questions or comments regarding Huntertown Cemetery? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, is that the full amount of our agenda?
Do you have this for budget and finance?
Yes. So, I got 2 items for animal control. I want you all to look at this. Animal control is, Officer Katner has looked at getting a new sign to reflect the change in ordinance, which we had previously discussed. Although it is not a budgeted line item, she does believe it can be covered in the maintenance line item for her budget. That's a total of $495 for that sign. That's installation and creation by Ruggles Sign Company. I don't ask you to vote on that, but I want you to take a look at it. The other thing is a personnel item. So Director Katner has interviewed 2 individuals. I sent you those applications today. We're in a situation right now where Teresa Tipton is out with her hip replacement surgery. She's really struggling with that in her recovery, and we wish her well. We send her thoughts and prayers. But it is a somewhat of a limitation on our ability to get things done HR-wise. We have payroll and those sort of basic things taken care of. But onboarding new employees, those sort of things, were a little bit slower while Teresa is out. But I do believe it's Emily's request that we look at these 2 individuals to be hired as part-time employees to assist with the care and maintenance of our shelter, taking care of administrative items, phones, that sort of stuff. So if it would, what I would be requesting is that if Director Katner has the ability to come to an agreement with the part-time rate for those folks to bring them on board in between now and our next meeting, that we would subject that to an email vote to bring them on board. And I'll send that. The full fiscal court has the 2 applications. And again, Emily Katner has interviewed those folks and wants to bring them on board. The last option is to arrive and settle upon a pay rate and to put it into a personnel order. So I will update the court. You may have an email vote, but in the Budget and Finance Committee, is there any objection to having an email vote on same? Seeing none, is there any other item to come before the Budget and Finance Committee? All right, we will reconvene in full court in a moment, and we have some special guests, the regional champion Woodford County soccer team and 2-time state champion cross-country runner Addie Moore. See you guys in a minute. Thank you.